Okay, welcome to the channel. This is your life again. There's a reason that plays into the narrative. A year ago, almost to the day, I lost my father, and as many people will know, that changes your world, changes your perspective, changes your life. And aside of everything else that's been going on behind that, it took me back into my own journeys of it's that you only realize how much you miss something when it's gone. And you also then start to question your relationship with that person. You look back at your life in different ways and for how it would have been, how it could have been, how it was. From a personal point of view, I don't have much in the way of early year recollection. It's a vague blur. There were a number of factors for that we went through. That got to that point. Loss of friends changed my own life back then. I went on a journey, I travelled, I took myself away. That was my escapism, that was my getting out of where I needed to be. That was my processing, I suppose. You lose friends through accidents and you go in a different direction. You can't stop that, you can't control that direction to any real extent. Some people get a clearly defined path and they pull themselves out of it. Some people never pull themselves out of it. I think I'm one of the luckier ones that pulled myself out of it and turned my life around. But that's part of the journey that I'm on now. And I wanted to do a series of just who I was, who I am. Don't have many photographs of me being a child, photos of school, which is odd. And I know my dad probably has some where we can't access those photographs for whatever reason. I don't even know if he has them anymore. He was one of those avid cine film buffs that had a camera with him just about everywhere. Mountain, hillsides, walks. Everywhere we went, I seem to remember him having a camera. I am surprised we don't have many. And then there were different parts of the life, or our life, there were different parts of our life that changed, from the divorce of parents and the remarrying of both parents. And so there's a huge, this is my own story. Everybody goes through these things and people have different variations of their own world and it gets turned upside down and we come out the other side. But mine, I suppose then, I don't speak to one side of the family now for different reasons. I don't see my other side now because they're no longer here and I can't access my memories, I can't access my photos or videos, I'm sure they must exist, but I don't have them. So I don't have much to work with. I have some photos. I have some of the old house we used to live in. I have a couple of old at school, at an event, and very little else to work with. So I may never see that. But then I progressed from teenage years into starting work, traveling at 17, 18, 19, festivals. The 17 to 19 part was a bit of a blur because we lost a lot of friends along the way. That turned my personal world in a very different direction, one that I didn't really have a lot of control over. I probably didn't want to. I just wanted to go and leave and find myself in festivals and jewelry and selling, just to get away from everything. That hiatus lasted maybe 5-6 years, early 20s. Throughout all that time, from probably 17s, I wasn't very musical. Still not very musical. I've written and performed and played, but I've done that using musicians around me that I could bounce off, I could learn from. I've been very lucky to have worked with some incredible people over the years, and I worked in the tech side of it and the production side of things, working in studios, working in London for a period of time and touring with one band in particular I was working with that I've been lucky enough to remain friends with the singer. We've written over the years. But all of that time from, I suppose, about 18, 19, I started writing and recording now. A lot of the details, and part of the reason for this audio cast, tube, channel, whatever you want to call it, is my own personal. I want to have something that maybe helps others, but it's also a journey that I'm going to be discovering things from the late 80s into 90s, early 90s, and then beyond up to about 2007, 2008, I was still writing. songs for my life then, and that's when I first met my wife. And there are songs there that form part of that latter stage of my life. But the earlier parts, in my 18, 19-year-old me, I wrote journals, I travelled, I had diaries, I had piles of paper, all with song lyrics on, but I've never seen the light of day. I have a folder on the PC here, for example, all, I suppose going back to the 18, 19, 20-year-old me, I was writing songs, scribbles, notes, bits of paper, old notebooks, and I'd have a guitar and I'd have a djembe drum. I took around to festivals, but my guitars, I had everything from old acoustics, 12 strings I took up to Glastonbury tour. I had a 12 string that went around the world, well, not around the world, I went across to Morocco with me on a few months travel. And I didn't play particularly well, as many of those people in those cafes in Morocco would probably testify. But I didn't believe at that point that I was doing it for anything other than having fun. And we travelled and we had coffees bought for us and invitations to drink tea with families and sell the inevitable rug. But that all came from playing music in cafes to earn our way, get some food, coming back through into Gibraltar, staying there for a week and sleeping on a barge with some friends that we'd met and took us in. And all the while I had a guitar with me. All the while we'd travelled through Morocco writing songs. We wrote songs on a barge that we were staying on. One barge in particular called the Malay Mock. And I don't know whether that's still there. It's one of these things I'm going to try and find out as we go. But we slept on this barge for a week, a friend of mine, myself, and we just travelled and enjoyed and took it all in, writing as we went. Malay Mock, I'd love to hear that. I'd love to hear that again. So I've got the lyrics. I've got notebooks full of stuff. And I don't have any particular musical skill. I can write and put ideas down, but I'm not musically trained. I wouldn't know what key I'm playing and I wouldn't know what chord I'm playing. I just play. And playing keyboards and pianos, I just plink around and make some melodies. That's all I've ever done. And those songs have formed out of a love for just playing and enjoying and having fun with it. So it was never going to be a career for me. I think working in the background of all of the music side of things in London, you always think in the back of your mind, I could do that. I'm going to write. And there's always a little bit of me that was kind of like writing for something later down the line. But working with one band in particular, I remember having to stand in 1996 in Nottingham, the Radio 1 Roadshow. And of course, you go, yeah, stand in. And then you realise the enormity of what that means. Now, to anybody playing, session musicians or the band themselves, that probably wasn't anything at all. To me, it was a case of having to stand there and perform in front of people, even though you're miming to a track. It's a 4-minute song, max, and all you got to do is stand there and move your hands. Simple. But I believe that it was far bigger than that, and I spent 2 nights with no sleep, watching old videos, watching top of the pop videos of this guy performing, playing, where his hands were going, where the notes were, and I just worked myself into a state. 2 days. I remember the morning of the event, I got picked up and driven to meet the band. We then drove on from London up to Nottingham. No sleep, just a complete mess. Excited, anticipation of it all, and scared shitless, if I'm honest. And all I had to do was stand there and mime. But to me, it was always a bit bigger than that because I made it bigger than it should have been. But it was at that point, standing on stage, I think I was helped onto the stage by the drummer and the singer. Jokingly, kind of walked us out, you'll be fine. But at that point, I realised seeing 20, 30,000 people in Nottingham Central Square, that wasn't for me. That wasn't my life. I loved writing, I loved jotting stuff down, I loved picking an acoustic guitar out and hammering some chords out at a party and pretending I could sing along. And I loved doing that. That was me. That was fun. I recorded some demo tapes and some albums with an old friend. I was lucky enough to be given a shed to use with a mini studio and a 4-track or an 8-track. It was 4-track at that time. And we did our first ever mini cassette, which I still have to this day. And then I recorded another one at an old friend's Farm, the second album. And all of those were, I think the first album called The Big Bouncy Bubble Bus, which was a ridiculous name for a ridiculous mini album. But it showed where I was at the time, all kind of like festivals and fun, and nothing was serious. And it was a lot of fun doing it. And then the second one was a little bit more from the heart. I think we'd lost another friend at that point through medical emergency in those early years, and I wrote a song about that, and that was on there, which wasn't the happy, jovial, bouncy bubble bus themed. But then there were some songs on that which were about loneliness and sitting on the edge of a world and watching. So there was a lot of just me in that, and that's where I am now. To try and explain, that's a little bit of the background. I'm discovering what I'd written back then to find out where I was, who I was. Moving on, sun dancing down, meet again, in denial, fragile, I can see the sun, bit of taste, last words, where there's a will, there's a way. There's that balance of kind of hope and despair in both of those, and I think I was going through all of that. And I documented it through writing, through notes, through poems, through verbal sketches, pull the covers tight, sometimes forever, honest with you, the understanding, where love is found. There was those moments of unrequited love, and back then as it was so transparently clear, wrong. It's never the first love is the last love in most cases. Sometimes it is. In the heat of the moment, the bubble bus, the big bouncy bubble bus on Fingaloo Parade. Sorry. I listen to it now, I love it, it's fun, it's a reflection of me then. That's what I'm going to try and find out. Now, the crux of that is there are songs on here, and I'm going to just pull a couple now from this folder, because the two CDs that I did, the second tape called Emotive, there are songs on there called Share My Tea, My World, Basements of the World, acoustic guitar and a drum, all recorded on a 4-track, not very well, Come Take a Walk With Me Beneath the Big Blue Sea, for example. And there's one here called Forever a Day. That man that's sitting on the edge of the world. It's all that he loves inside this tree. It's all that you need when you have no family. Now, dramatic as it sounds, that was at the time of protests that were going on around a new road being built, and that was my kind of, I was part of that protest. We were trying to stop the trees from being pulled down in Salisbury Hill, and there were a number of protests that were taking place, and there was a guy camped up in his tree. He'd been living there for weeks, and they were trying to get him down, and I think the song then goes on to say they were trying to smoke him out from the tree, trying to cut off his supplies. That was my take on what was happening then, and I jotted it down. There are songs from the Big Bouncy Bubble Jam, which is a song called A Figure with a Frown. Guy sitting on the edge of a world. Now this was recorded in a friend's shed many moons ago. But the guy I was working, recording with, he produced it for me, bass player, helped do some keyboards on it, helped do the sounds. And it became just my song. I couldn't play very well back then, but I now want to hear those variations, those songs come to life in different forms, and that's where we are with AI now. I've been indulging in some of the artificial intelligence systems and production tools to take those ideas from what I had and give them a new life, to reimagine them. Now, this is a whole new debate, which I'm not going to get into, in terms of the AI and what it can do and what it can mean and what it's going to do moving forward and the changes that it will bring. I've worked with people that have struggled, battling through years of small gigs, pouring their heart into every performance and finally getting breakthroughs. Some never have had breakthroughs, and I know what it is to be I'm not a musician in that respect. I've never had to hone my trade and do that, but I've seen how soul destroying it can be and how incredible it can be when it goes in a different direction. I think AI is going to change the way that game is played. Any artist, any creative that can never be taken away. Artificial intelligence has no heart. It can create what it hears. It's scraping, that's a word that's used in AI, it scrapes what's out there, reimagines it. It has artistic license when you give it artistic license. I'm using a program at the moment to try and bring some of those songs back to life. You give it what you have and it then takes it into a different form. Now, early days of dabbling with this particular path, I didn't give it the right instruction. I just said, go ahead and make me something, and it just came. Nothing at all that I had in mind. It didn't have the heart that those old, scratchy, out-of-tune recordings had. And I remember being back there, writing those. Sometimes I remember where I was sitting, which room I was in, cross-legged on the floor in an old flat. And those songs were just my little musings then. To then take that into a different format, and I think AI is going to be able to give people, I'm not going to be pro or anti AI. I'm using it with everything I give it and stuff that I've worked on, I've written. I've sent hundreds of little scratchy recordings on a tape to myself to copyright it back in the 90s, early 90s, knowing that one day it would possibly be used. And the fact we're still doing it now, still playing and still loving it is great. It's not my career choice, and I'm using this as my own deep dive into my past and history, which is, I'm looking forward to it because there's a lot of stuff here that I've heard a few of these tracks already and I've gone, it's exactly what I wanted. And to hear it with a band, to hear it with different vocalists, this is where AI is going to give you a stepping stone to saying, here's my original idea. I don't have a band yet, but what could it be? And then you then take it, if you're musically trained, inclined, and have that as your life skill, which I don't, to a band, and you go off and perform that in that. It gives you some ideas, it gives you some amazing insights into what that song could sound like, and then you do the rest. Some of these software systems allow you to put a few keywords in and make a song about that, and I think you've got nothing there to start with and you're just using everything that's already there. Now, there are a lot of legal loopholes, I think, with AI, and that's going to become apparent in the future, so I won't go into that. There are videos out there that deal with that. So some of the music that you're creating goes into the big machine and it gets spat out on the other side of the world, and somebody's going to use that hook and you're going to go, that's mine, and then they're going to go, actually, you're using. I think there's a whole load of that could be coming. I'm not overly worried because I already have the backbone of the song, the structure, the chords, the lyrics, the copyright. What will be, will be. And this is not for any financial gain. This is just purely my soul search. And for example, there was that track there, A Figure with a Frown. Now, I threw this into Suno, which is the software system I'm using. There are others out there. I felt this fitted better with what I was doing. This is the free version, so it takes the idea as it is and uses artistic license. So we'll play that now. And you have the opening chords. But now it's given it strings, which I didn't have. But I wanted that heartfelt emotion of a guy sitting on the edge of a rock in the middle of the sea, looking over the sea. That was one.
A figure with a frown now sits on the edge of the world, staring out across the sea. Amazing things he's gotten on his mind. If you were easily fooled, you would see. He's got a lot of tales to tell, all thoughts and stories he's willing to sell. If you look closely, you would see only he knows what it all means. Sitting there looking out across the water, he feels.
So I took it in a different direction and I like it. That's one of the variations. This is the free version. It's not going to be as the ability of the AI is limited slightly. I think you can pay and upgrade and have a better version. So we're going to do that anyway to see what we can bring to the table. Here is the second version. It gives you 2 versions per credit. And it's got the same lulling, beautiful acoustic. Now, same chords. It's changed it slightly in terms of the feel.
Figure with a frown now sits on the edge of the world.
That's more me. That's more my style.
Staring out across the sea. Amazing things he's gotten on his mind. If you were easily fooled, you would see. He's got a lot of tales to tell.
So it's more dreamy, it's got the backbone behind that, it's got the drums, it's got the it's pulled everything together. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect, it's a variation on what I created, and you have the option to listen to the older version here.
Figure with a frown now sits on the edge of the world.
And artificial intelligence captures what it hears. So the pauses, the irregular choruses, I've stretched out some of those verses and choruses because that's all I knew. Not perfect, and a long way to go. So it's given me a good idea now, and having done some different versions beyond here with some of the older songs, now I've got hundreds of songs here. So that's why I've called it This Is Your Life again, because I want to hear me back then, where I was in those, I call them missing years, because I don't remember much about them. And there could have been a lot of reasons for that. And the travel plans, the getting away from everything, the carefree. I was still working, never stopped working, selling jewellery, doing whatever I could to earn money to get to the next festival, to get to the next project. But all the while, I remember being, I think 17 actually, riding a motorbike from Weston up over to the top of the hills here, Cheddar. It was a farm, pulling cheese moulds out at 6 in the morning. So I'd write and play just until late night, fall asleep, get up, go to work at 6, do 6 till 3, come back, do the same again. I was living in a shared house in Weston. And all of that while I was still writing and just jotting stuff down. And lost, I suppose, is one word. One way of looking at it. And now I'm trying to rediscover that part that was there. I want to know my old me. I want to know the old story and where I was in my head at that point. And I may find nothing, but at least I can look back and say I've done it, and I've taken all of this stuff and put it into something, and I can hear it, listen to it, enjoy it, and as it was kind of intended back then. And that's where AI is going to come in and step into this part now and give it a body. I had an idea back then, which was the dream, and I now want to build it and shape it into something and see where we go with it. Find out more about me as I go. And I'm working on parts of a family tree. It's all tying in, and I wanted to document it because I'm sure there are hundreds of thousands, if not more, of people with songs, poems, jottings, musings somewhere, not musically engaged in the industry now or able to, or has it as a career choice. I'm mid-50s or approaching, so that's kind of missed that boat, and I don't mind because that was never my boat to catch. But I want to hear what I was seeing back then, and I'm sure hundreds of people have the same. So if this inspires in some way, then fantastic. Dig it out, use AI. It's not commercially viable for me now. I don't need to. I have the life I wanted, and it didn't come through music. It was a stepping stone. It was a bounce block. It was all of the things that you dream of. But the life I have now is very different. However, I want to see what the life was back then, and I'm sure other people will do the same. So if this inspires in some way, using AI to bring those ideas to life, and that's all it's about, it's going to be an interesting journey. And I hope some of this is of use and inspires you to do the same. So part 2, we'll take a track, we'll feed it in, and see what happens. Right now, this is all about the intro and the backstory. And apologies if it's a long one. Let's see where it goes. This is your life again. Well, my life again. Thank you for being part of this journey.